Happy Halloween, boils and ghouls! It's the Pet Sematary saga for Saga Saturday. I saved this for last, saved the best for last. Pet Sematary is my favorite horror movie of all time. Probably one of my favorite movies of all time. I grew up watching this movie. It's kind of like a staple in my family. Like, we all know that if you want to get fucked up for Halloween, you watch Pet Sematary because it's really, really scary. This is one of the few movies that every time I watch it, it creeps me out, irregardless. So I just wanted to do a super, super deep dive on it. Kind of start with the book. So the book was written by Stephen King, I think 1983. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And he wrote it because he lived at a house by a busy road, and his son's cat got run over, right? And so that's what gave him the idea. Oh, hey, what about a book where animals get killed? And then his son actually ran out on the road and almost got killed. And Stephen King said right at that moment, when he like saved his kid, the whole book was written in his mind. And so this movie is terrifying on like a visceral level. Like, what is the universal thing that all humans are afraid of? Death, right? You can say that you don't, you're not scared of that and all that kind of stuff, but everybody, it's survival instinct. Everybody at the end of the day is afraid of death. And that's why this book, movie, all that, it manages to be so terrifying, because it taps into that universal fear, not only of yourself dying, but of loved ones dying. And that's what makes it work so well. Thematically, you have your two protagonists, right? You have Louis Creed and Rachel Creed as the mains, and they're both completely inequipped to handle death in their own right. You have Rachel, who had a traumatic experience with her sister, Zelda, back in the day. She was sick with spinal meningitis, and she passed away. And so she, because of that, is like unequipped to deal with death. Like, she has like kind of a denial towards death, even when the old man, Fred Gwynn, who is the best fucking actor, but in the book he plays, what the fuck is his name? Judd Crandall. So yeah, Judd Crandall takes him to the pet cemetery, and, Rachel is mad that they're in this cemetery because she's unequipped to deal with death. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have Louis Creed. He's a doctor. He's very cold and clinical about death, right? So both of those are the extremes, but when their son dies, spoilers, I guess, but when Gage, their son, gets hit by the car, in completely different ways, they're both ill-equipped to handle it. So that's kind of the thematic of the book, is like, what happens when two people who can't deal with death have to deal with it. You can't let it go. Like, if something happens to somebody that you love, it's super hard to let it go, And so in a metaphorical sense, that's what the book and the movie are really about, is like, if you can't let something go, it's going to keep coming back to haunt you. And it's even literally shown with Rachel. She sees her sister long after her sister has died, just because she's so haunted by that memory. And then, each person that dies in the book represents the hardest kinds of death to deal with. You have the cat. It's super hard to have a loved, animal or a pet that dies. You have the kid. It's super awful and unnatural to have a child die. You have, when Rachel's a kid, when her sister Zelda passes away, it's somebody who's sick. It's before their time. There's even their maid or whatever. She hangs herself. So the whole kind of thing focuses around these people dying in like not the natural accepted way. And how do we deal with that? And a lot of times we can't. And so that's when it comes back to haunt us. So that's what I think is like so smart about the book and the movie, is just that whole thematic element, and then that universal fear of death that we all have. That's what makes it universally creepy for all of us, right? And but what the movie and the book managed to pull off so well is you have such a heavy subject matter like that. Like, that's so just morbid and depressing, but it manages to be so entertaining also, that like, you don't mind watching this movie or reading that book, because it's scary and it's kind of fun in a way, So it's like, that's the true strength. That's what brings me back every time to Pet Sematary, is it manages to pull off having the most dark and morbid themes, but still be entirely watchable. And that's what other movies that handle really morbid themes, I feel, aren't able to pull off quite as well. Like, it's movies like Eraserhead and stuff like that. Like, I'm not really trying to watch that every day. It's really dark and depressing and kind of fucked up. And this movie's dark and depressing and fucked up too, but it also manages to be so entertaining and just well done and good to watch, So it's like, this is a great movie. The movie itself got some great special effects. You got Victor Pascal with the head injury. Really good effects on that. Zelda, is one of the most terrifying characters in film history, in my opinion. Every scene with her is so creepy and so well done. They actually had an anorexic man playing her just because of they really wanted to, give you the feeling of like this uncanny illness, And so this movie is my favorite horror film of all time. Really, really great. Super spooky Halloween watch. It's also got an amazing song at the end by the Ramones doing the Pet Sematary theme song. That's something that's kind of missing from horror movies and movies in general nowadays. Remember when the movies would have like their own theme song? Like somebody wrote a pop rock or a pop song or a rock song for the movie. Like that's really fun. And that just, again, dark movie, but you have a lot of fun at the end because you get the big spook and then you get the Ramones coming. How dope is that? It's a lot of fun to watch. So Pet Sematary earns my absolute highest recommendation for Halloween. But this is Saga Saturday, so we got to dive into the sequels. And oh boy, let's dig these up. You get it? Okay, Pet Sematary 2. I don't know what happened. I've tried to do a lot of research on this film because this was from the same director as the first Pet Sematary, Mary Lambert. And you would think that that's a lock-in, right? But the script for this film was written by the author, Stephen King, so it had that. This movie is a pretty open and shut case. It doesn't really leave it too open for a sequel. You have your final spook at the end. But it's pretty open and shut. So I understand that, the studio demands a sequel. You do what you can. You make it work. But this is a fucking head scratcher. Like, it is so vastly different from the first movie. There's so many, like, little errors, like the way the Pet Sematary looks in this movie and its location in relation to hotspots, that are shown in the first movie are completely off. Like the way the Pet Sematary looks in this movie is not at all the way it looks in the OG. So I don't really know what happened there. It also has a really weird horror comedy element. This movie does deliver on the gore effects, but it's not as like theme heavy either. I kind of feel like, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, Mary Lambert, if you're watching this, I'm not trying to be a dickhole here. But, like, maybe you didn't quite get what you were directing here, and you kind of just directed what your understanding of Pet Sematary was here. And that's okay. Everybody has their own interpretation. But the way I interpret this movie is, I think it's very thematically makes your head go. And then this movie is, what? It's kind of pure 90s cheese. That being said, I do enjoy the movie. It's just one of those things where I have to kind of take it out of my brain that it's a Pet Sematary film. I do enjoy it on its own merits, and I don't mean to be a dick to anybody who made the movie. Like, look at them, they're out making a movie, and I'm sitting here with my thumb in my ass. But I just really like what happened, Again, that being said, there's some really fun sequences in this movie. Clancy Brown is in this movie, who does the voice of Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob, and there's one scene where he's laughing with food in his mouth, and he straight up goes, ah, gah, 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 just like Mr. Krabs. It's great. It's worth purchasing for that scene alone. He also kills a kid. You don't really get that in movies nowadays, but he does it with a dirt bike tire, and that's wild. That's the craziest shit I ever saw. So, this movie does have its merits, just overall, not really a Pet Sematary movie in my opinion. So, alright guys, we really got to talk about this one. Now, I was nice when I was talking about Pet Sematary 2, but this makes it really hard to be nice to the Pet Sematary franchise. Yes, I own it, but if you've been watching my videos before Monster Madness or whatever we're calling this, 31 Days of Blu-rays, you would know that this is a movie that I have said that I don't love that I own. And I own it for a collector's sake. I want to have all the Pet Sematary movies. I think this is an interesting case study, and I'll get into that. But this is a shitty fucking movie, guys. I don't know what happened. So, this is going to be, we're going real deep here. I had been anticipating the Pet Sematary remake because it was announced like 10 years before this. And it's one of those movies that I had been like following online. Every time there was some sort of update, I would be on that shit like a fucking dog, tracking this. And I was so excited. We saw this opening night. The trailers gave away a spoiler. I mean, if you've made it this deep into the video, you obviously don't care about spoilers. So Ellie dies instead of Gage. And they showed that in the trailer, and I was kind of okay with it. I was like, look, if they pull it off, I'm okay with a little change up. I don't love it, but I get it. And I'll tell you what's so frustrating about this movie is when things work in it, they work so well. But when things don't, it's baffling because you have the source material, right? Like, I understand going a little deeper and putting some stuff that was in the book but not in the movie, like the Wendigo and stuff like that. Like, they touch on that a little bit more, and that's very interesting. They also have some scenes that were in the book that weren't in the movie. But then you have stuff that, like, the movie perfected. And, like, don't fuck with that. Like, the original movie perfected the way Zelda was shown. And in this movie, oh my god, her death is so fucking stupid. Like, in the original and in the book, you know, she passes away naturally from her disease. In this movie, she passes away because Rachel puts a plate up through, like, a laundry chute elevator kind of a thing. She puts a plate up, and then her sister goes to grab it and falls down the chute and dies. That's like a fucking cartoon Tom and Jerry shit. Like, the fucker falls down a laundry chute and dies. And it's all in the name of just this stupid jump scare where you have her, like, on her way down. That's so stupid. Like, what the fuck? And so, she's completely mishandled in this movie. Pascal is totally wasted. He's barely in it. And when he is, it's just, there's almost like this kind of fun campiness with Pascal in this one. And that's what, again, like, you know, it manages to be a really dark and morbid story, but with some fun, and he's a little campy in it, you know? He says, like, some little cheesy things that kind of make it fun. Pascal has straight up no character in this movie at all. So I don't know what happened there. But then there's some really smart things, like, and that's what makes it all the more frustrating, is, like, the stuff with the cat. The cat acts a lot more weird and possessed when it comes back from the pet cemetery. And that's kind of a little bit of a wasted opportunity in the book and in this first movie. They didn't go as hard. Like, the cat just kind of comes back and it's being an asshole. But most cats are assholes, you know? But, like, in this movie, you know, when, if I remember right, when Judd is getting killed by Ellie, the cat is standing there, like, licking its lips. And it's like, oh, that's good. That's a creepy little touch, you know? Like, that shows that this cat knows what's going on, and it's smart and evil, you know? That's really, really smart. So you have things like that. Like, they had a lot of cool stuff with the cat. They started off doing some really cool stuff with Ellie. Like, when she comes back, she's asking her father about, like, you know, why did you bring me back? And, like, I know I'm dead. And, like, saying all this weird, creepy shit. And it's like, oh, perfect. Like, that's why you guys changed it. So you could have some, you know, she's a little bit older, so she can be more aware of death and things like that. Like, oh, that's a creepy. And so it's got me. And then the next scene, she's fucking doing, like, this stupid zombie dance in the living room. And you're just like, what the fuck is this? Like, that's the thing. This movie, it baffles me, because for every great decision, there's something that's so bad. And even I wanted to be like, yes, at least, you know, it's filmed with a bigger budget, so, like, the cinematography, but I way prefer the way this movie looks. Like, this doesn't have, like, that crappy digital cinematography where when it shows the pet cemetery, fucking the length of it, you can tell it's just, they put a few gravestones, and then the rest of it is in front of a green screen to give it, like, this depth, and it's got, like, this fake-looking CGI blue filter. Like, all this digital cinematography, like, maybe I'm sounding like a boomer here, but I way prefer how creepy the pet cemetery looked in this, because it was just normal in daylight, and the cemetery itself is creepy, you know? And, like, I don't know, this movie, it just, I guess the thing about this movie is it really puts into perspective, like, yeah, you can give some assholes $500 million or whatever, but if you give somebody who's really creative and has a story to tell $5 million, you have a lot better movie. And I know that the big thing was that this was rushed because Stephen King was wanting the rights to Pet Sematary back because it was encroaching that 30-year law where movies go back to their original owner. So that's what happened. So they really just busted this out. But it's just, on so many levels, it's such a missed opportunity because it's all spelled out for you. Like, it's not that hard to make a great Pet Sematary remake. Just touch on things that wasn't in the first one, add to stuff that was in the first one. You know, it's not that hard at all. And then the whole thing with the kids with the masks, that just felt like trailer fodder. Like, in the movie, it literally shows them for 2 seconds, and then it moves on, you know? And then, but in the trailer, they're pretty prominently featured, like, oh, there's gonna be these creepy kids with masks, but, like, why? What's the point, you know? That being said, as much shit as I've talked, it's somewhat entertaining. It's not a totally garbage film, like I said. It has some really, really good stuff. You know what I just remembered, though? Michael fucking tangent here. But when this fucking little girl gets hit by the truck, too, it so obviously misses her. Like, it goes, right? And then it shows her go flying. But then she's perfectly intact on the ground. Like, she just jumped out of the way. And she's just laying there like, this is an R-rated horror film. It should be pretty gross when a little girl gets hit by a truck, you know? But she's just like, fucking cuddling on the grass, dead. So stupid. So that pisses me off. But overall, this movie does have its merits. The band Starcrawler did a pretty good cover of the original Ramones song that's at the end, and that comes up, so that was a nice little wink and nod to the first movie. But overall, I would say the only Pet Sematary truly worth your time is the 1989 original and the book. The book is so worth reading. Even if you're not like an avid reader, that is just a great book. It's a really great story, well told. The acting in this is a little cheesy, it is a little dated, but I think it adds to kind of the fun of this movie and makes, you know, the dark, morbid tone a little more easy to digest. So that's it, guys. We have done the 31 days of Blu-rays. I've talked endlessly about Pet Sematary, my favorite horror film of all time. It's a movie to watch on Halloween night because it's big, spooky. It's all the time. Gonna scare you. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a pain in the ass to make, to be honest with you, talking about... I mean, I talk about movies anyway. The only difference is I'm being filmed. But just like the commitment of like doing this every single day. So I'm gonna take a little break after this video goes up. Maybe just a couple weeks, and I'll be coming with some exciting new content. You know me. My content is always so exciting, exhilarating, titillating even. And I'll see you guys. Hopefully I get a lot of subscribers off this. Have a good, happy Halloween and be safe. Trick or treat and smell my feet, bitches.